Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
I'm so excited about today's guest. She is an excellent young leader. I'm not going to tell her age. I don't know her age, but she gives a great interview on how to lead when you're the youngest person in the room. Now, I have had seasons where I was the youngest person in the room, but I want to ask, have you ever been led by somebody much younger than you, whether in ministry or a job, and how did that work out for you?
Well, mine kind of fits a little bit more along the lines around what Mahogany was talking about. I was asked to speak at a women's retreat, and I roll up and with my wingman, and we're staying in a retreat center type thing. We're checking in, and I'm saying hi to some of the mutual people that I knew and catching up with them. And there was a lady, she was probably 65 or over, doing check-in. And she's leaning over to one of the other leaders, and she goes, "Our speaker is not here yet. Like, she hasn't checked in." And the lady she was talking to, she said, "This is our speaker." And the lady goes, "That is our speaker?" And it was a hard moment. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the majority of the audience was 50 and up. I was in my upper 30s. And so it was a very intimidating weekend. I will tell you that she actually found me at the end of the weekend, and she said, "I wrote a lot of narratives and kind of wrote you off." And I'm so thankful that she said that to me, because she said, "God really used you." At the end of the weekend, I mean, she was really like, "God really used you to speak some things into me." But she said, "I wrote you off because of your age." And I mean, you guys, it's scary sometimes to walk into a place where God's called you to teach or lead in some capacity, and you feel like you're being scrutinized, surely because of your age. And, you know, in the beginning, she didn't really even want to give the wisdom that God had poured into me a chance. And scripture really speaks to that. You know, it doesn't matter really your age, because multiple perspectives and generations make us better. I value the perspective below me in terms of age. I also value the perspectives above me in age. There's so much value in both. And so I'm really excited about today's interview about leading as a young leader and what to do with that.
Yeah, I think on this one, Josh, is a great question. I was like you, the younger leader, and I could have benefited from hearing Mahogany 30 years ago, because it would have prevented me from making some of the mistakes I made along the way. And so not only do we want you to listen to Mahogany today, I want to tell you Mahogany is going to be at the D6 conference in April, and along with many other wonderful speakers. And I would invite you to step in and realize that there's some wisdom coming from various perspectives, various ages. I just don't know many conferences where you can go to and find as many talented, insightful, but yet genuine and authentically real people than you do at our conference. So what you're hearing on this podcast is just a tiny, tiny experiential representation of what you can get at that event. So I want us to strap on and buckle in whatever we're doing to kind of be vulnerable enough to let Mahogany speak to us. Because if you're in that older age group, she's also talking to you today. And I want you to hear her wisdom as she's speaking to that younger leader on the other side of this break when we come back.
We all need a reset from time to time. When disruption comes, the shock, confusion, and stress can often cause leaders to misjudge priorities. Coming out of a crisis requires us to evaluate what has changed and what we should do to move forward. That's why we chose the theme Reset for the upcoming D6 conference. We want to help you not only value the past, but also look forward, and equally important, take the time to properly evaluate without making hasty predictions. In a culture marked by generational challenges and conflicts, ministry leaders, parents, and volunteers need solid resources to help them navigate a complex and ever-changing terrain. Whether you're a parent or a leader or both, at the 2022 D6 conference, you'll have the opportunity to plan your discipleship strategy and be equipped and empowered with invaluable tools and resources. Join us April 20th through the 22nd in Orlando, Florida, as we come together to reset, refocus, and reconnect as ministry leaders, parents, and volunteers. The D6 Conference is the family ministry conference for your entire team. Register today and save at d6conference.com.
Mahogany Finley serves as the training manager for the International Network of Children's Ministry. She is passionate about seeing children's ministry leaders get connected to all they need to serve kids and families. She has served almost 7 years as a full-time children's pastor. She is also a graduate of Bethel Seminary, where she earned a Master of Arts in Children's and Family Ministry. Mahogany, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So we're talking about a topic today that is kind of a difficult topic, but such a needed topic, and that's how to lead when you are the youngest person in the room.
Yes.
Something that I think there's not enough books out there about. I don't even know if there are books out there about that, but it's something every young leader struggles with.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges you see young leaders facing when it comes to leadership?
You know, one of the things that I feel like is kind of challenging for young leaders is to just be confident in their own leadership style. There's just a lot of comparison. You can get caught up in the comparison game where, and I know I've struggled with this as a young leader of, well, I don't lead like this person, or I don't have a style like this person, or I don't feel like I've been successful at this or that. Instead of leaning into the strengths that you have and working on those things. So comparison becomes a challenge, and also just confidence. You know, like me being a millennial leader, I led as the youngest person in the room with a lot of baby boomers, and how intimidating, right? Because my experience with that generation is uber confidence. Like, this is what we're going to do. I am confident. This is the way we're going to do it. Very much I don't want to say set in their ways, but very much firm in their convictions. I mean, they're older, first of all, but they have a way about them. So to be able to come in and sort of assert a new way or to make change is a bit challenging. So just confidence in who you are, who God has made you to be as a leader, and not comparing yourself to other leaders.
Well, it can be really challenging to lead people who are much older than you. Some leaders seem to go to one extreme where they get so intimidated that they're just frozen in fear. Other leaders kind of go to the other extreme where they just demand respect and it's my way or the highway. What are some practical ways that leaders can connect and make inroads with older generations?
Yeah, that's so great, because I think you're right. Those extremes are easy to jump into. And you know, I think one of the ways that you can sort of help to not be at those extremes is to build relationships and hear the stories of older leaders that you're serving with, because in relationship you find trust. You can learn what do we have in common. You can see the perspective that they're coming from, and I'm less likely to demand my way or to feel like I can't press forward if I know you, if I have a relationship with you, if we share some common things. And so I feel like building relationships is great, and hearing other people's perspective, not feeling like you always have to relent to other people's perspective, but all in all, connecting with the people that you're leading before you feel like you need to demand one way or the other. Because I think a lot of times that comes either being frozen in fear or demanding your way. Both, I think, stem from insecurities. And so what are some ways that you can eliminate or subdue your insecurities? Just get to know the people, and some things, some stories that you may be telling yourself about the leaders or about leaders you're serving with or about the changes that you want to make may not even be the case. So I would say relationship is huge.
One of the things that's tempting is when we take over a new ministry, and this even applies to the business world, but we get in a new position, we immediately see all the bad, and we just want to make sweeping changes right away and say, we're going to just completely demolish what's been done. Let's go ahead and start something new. But that can be problematic at times. What are some things that young leaders should keep in mind before they start making these sweeping changes through the church that really affects the landscape?
Yeah, I think it's so critical. Making change is probably the biggest tension as a young leader coming in, or it's you're in your first year. And I would say to begin with, you don't have to make changes right away to assert your competence, that it is more important to understand and to learn context. So, for example, when I was in my first year of being a children's pastor, I really had no clue what I was doing at all. And I did see some things that maybe I wanted to change, but for the first year I was there, I went exactly with the way things were for the first year. However, XYZ event or XYZ system operated, I just studied the way it had been done to have context first so that I could know, okay, if I want to make a change, this is how it's been done before. And I think that's important. Like, you don't have to make changes right away to make it seem like, oh, I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm doing. It's better to study, be a student of the people, of the culture, of the church before you start to try to make major changes, because that's going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what you just said. You didn't say that you spent 1 week or 1 month. That was 1 year. And I know that has to seem like a lifetime when you're just waiting. But sometimes we get in too much of a hurry to make those changes.
We do.
And do you have any examples of ways you've seen how this has gone really good or gone really bad when change has been made too fast or on time? And
yeah, when I came in, I noticed that when I came into my ministry position, there was a curriculum that was being used that I studied for 2 years before I decided to make a change. And I feel like it ended up being successful. I ended up changing the curriculum. So, as a sidebar, a curriculum change is not just a curriculum change. That's like, if people are attached to a certain way of doing things, our activities always look this way. No, we always receive things this way. This is how we do it. There's emotions attached to that. It's not just we're changing what we're teaching. And so I had some success because, again, I waited 2 years with the curriculum that was being used, and then met with leaders to get buy-in. So those that had been using the curriculum for a long period of time, I just, hey, can we talk? Because I'm feeling like the Lord is leading us in a different direction, and I just want to know what you think. So having those meetings, making sure the senior leadership was on board with that, and when it was time to make the change, everybody embraced it because they didn't feel blindsided, and I didn't make the decision in a silo, which is really important. Yes. You've got to have community. You've got to seek wise voices so that the decisions that you're making are measured. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to kind of turn the tables a little bit on this and flip the perspective. I'd love for you to speak to those who have a young leader in their church. What can they do to support and encourage that young leadership?
Yeah, one thing that I would say is that, it's, and maybe every young leader doesn't struggle with this, but there's I feel like a pressure to exude confidence in what you're doing. But I would tell the person who is leading that young leader or sees that young leader that don't take the confident stride as that they're super comfortable or that they know what they're doing or that they've got it all together. More than likely, they're wanting someone to reach out to them to help them walk alongside. And something so interesting, I think that people see young leaders and get really excited about their giftedness and think that their giftedness and the potential that they see, oh, they know what to do with that. They've arrived. But what they really need is for someone to walk alongside them and say, hey, I noticed you're really excited about this. I noticed you're really passionate about that. How can I support you? How can I pray for you? Here's what I'm reading. What do you need? A lot of times just that simple question of what do you need, even if it looks like they've got it all together, I'm telling you, they'd like someone to pay attention to their journey and ask them what they need, walk alongside, build a relationship.
I love that. I want to give you the last word here.
Yeah.
What encouragement can you offer to the young leader who just feels dejected and discouraged and really doesn't know what to do?
Yeah, I would say you have to know and be convinced over and over and over again that the Lord has made a way for you to be in that position because He wants you there and you have influence and it matters. And I think you can walk into a leadership position and feel so confident of that. And as the weight of it starts to come upon you, that begins to wane. And so I would say if you're discouraged or you feel like you're not making progress, first of all, do a heart check. Make sure that you are convinced of that you're there, that God has placed you there, that you have influence, and you can do this. The Lord placed you there for a reason. And so that means that He's gifted you for that time. And I would also say on a very practical level that coaching is everything. And coaching, good coaching, is not prescriptive. It's not, hey, here, young leader, here's what you need to do. Good coaching is helping that leader to get to where they feel like God is calling them. And so I would recommend coaching for a young leader 100%.
Well, this has been excellent. Sometimes when we discuss ministry, we often forget about these leadership principles and studying the organizational culture and some of the underlying things that have been there in the church forever.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing this. This is such important information for leaders, whether you're a young leader, you're an old leader, whether you're supporting the leaders in your church.
Yeah.
These are principles that we need to know. Thank you for being here, and just thank you for just pouring into our leaders with what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. Love young leaders. You can do it, young leader. You've got this.
Well, I am so thankful for her voice and her wisdom here. She really was vulnerable about what our young leaders are experiencing. And one of the things that she said was they're feeling the pressure to exude confidence. So could I throw out to you guys, have you guys ever walked through a season where you felt like you needed to jump in and walk in and step in as the hero and the know-it-all out of your own insecurity?
Way too many times.
Yes. Yes. And I felt like a fraud sometimes. I'll just be honest. It's like fake it till you make it. And you're called. And I find in those moments, it was never a question of the calling or if God had placed me there, but it was like she said, my own insecurities. And she said, try to not be insecure. I think there's that balance of being vulnerable and sharing some of your insecurities, but also affirming God's placement of you wherever it is in role of leadership. And now that I'm on the other side of that, the young guy with all of my team basically being much younger than me, like 15 years younger than me, but there are places that right now they could lead circles around me in certain areas because of just they are wired up that way. And I want to realize where finding the wisdom for me, where to step back and let them run and just attempt to work smarter, maybe not harder, and realize, you know what, it's not my job to be that young buck anymore. It is my job to help, stand back and coach and, speak where I need to speak, but also knowing when to let it go and let them run.
Yeah. The first day I walked onto the Randall House campus and was named as the CEO, you're walking in from the outside. And I was excited, nervous, every amount of emotions you can have. But I'll tell you where I got the most nervous. The first time I was sending out a company-wide email. Now, that may not sound like a big deal to most of our listeners. But when you realize that we as a publisher have a building full of editors, and I'm about to send out the first communication, and they're going to judge me based on how I say it, how grammatically correct I am, my word choice. Did I split my infinitives? Did I dangle a participle? I was like, I don't want to hit send. I mean, I was really in frozen mode. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I knew I was not going to write at their level. I wasn't going to be at that point. But a couple of years later, one of the things we did in this, and I think it exudes the principles Mahogany is talking about, among our entire leadership team, there were two very strong editors, one who led the curriculum department, another who led the book department. And I asked them to once a week share a rule of grammar that we wouldn't recognize in ourselves. And we just started that. We just wanted those leaders to speak into every other leader. And that's the community of the hearts that Mahogany's talking about here. Learn from each other, share the story, share some insights. We don't have to point fingers. We can just open up our hearts.
I think there were two aha moments for me just to be aware of in my leadership narratives. And I think it's good for all of us. Two things. The one thing is changes don't need to happen just to assert your competence.
That is power. I wish every student leader would hear that one.
I mean, ooh, my goodness. I mean, she is just on fire with that. Like, I think that happens. I think we want to change, just to assert that we know what we're doing. And that is insecurity talking. And then the other thing that she said that I think the insecurity thing goes along with, and I think it's a big, huge danger, red flag, and can destroy, and I will use that word, destroy ministry and leadership and moving the kingdom of God forward. And that's comparison. When we look to the left and to the right and we start to compare, we're losing sight of looking, there's a book out there that I'm reading right now called Walking in the Dust of the Rabbi. And it's really powerful. And it's just talking about how you're walking so closely with Jesus. And so it's so easy for us to look to the left and to the right that we're no longer catching the dust of Jesus as he's walking right in front of us, if that makes sense as a leader. And comparison is dangerous. It is the thief of good leadership. Well, God called you to this path, to this place for such a time as this.
And so often in ministry, we look to see what every other church and every other ministry like ours is doing, and we want to replicate that. But God doesn't call us to be replicators. One of the first characteristics about God and Scripture is, in the beginning, God created. He is a creator making new things, and that is what we're supposed to do. And so often when we do that comparison thing you're talking about, Marianne, because it's a trap for young leaders. Instagram, show the best, hide the rest. We see everybody else's highlight reel and try to compare it to our behind the scenes, and that is not what we're supposed to do there. And usually I have learned, and especially like my son's a musician and is an artist, so often the same thing can happen no matter what field you're working in. But usually we try to tamp down that makes us different so often because we don't want to seem strange or weird. But the truth is that thing that makes you unique is usually what God put in you to make you different, to help you to stand out. He is made perfect in our weakness, not our strength. And I think trying to be the best version of you, I tell my kids, God created only one you. You're it. Yeah. Go the best version of that you can be. Right. And I think if young leaders can grasp that right at the beginning, goodness, it'll save them a lot of heartache.
I just wanted to share a quote that I heard that just really changed my life in the last 5 years. And, Tabidi Anatawabi was the one who shared this one, but it's so powerful. He said, discontentment comes from lingering on the affairs of man rather than lingering on the affairs of God.
That's powerful. It truly is. Josh, I wish you could shout from the mountaintops for younger and older leaders that principle of replicating and being who they are. Man, that just breeds multiple different identities within the church, and it just confuses the congregants when we replicate and we don't know where we're coming from. I loved one other phrase that Mahogany gave, and she was talking about that idea of mentoring and coaching across generations. And I really want us to catch this. This is usually an academic term, but she said it in such a wonderful, soft, understandable way. She said, coaching is not prescriptive, but it's descriptive, sharing the stories and learning together. In academia, we toss around, are you writing from a prescriptive or a descriptive fashion? And most people go, what do you mean? Well, I think we all do, but let me just break it down. When you mentor somebody, you're not prescribing a specific way of doing it. You're describing some of the lessons you've learned and letting them fit it into their life. In other words, don't dictate and create a mini me or try to duplicate yourself. Just share out of the overflow of your mistakes or maybe some successes and see what people can do with it. I love that comment from Mahogany.
And speaking of coaching, one resource that I think would be really helpful in light of this conversation for young leaders, any leaders, is our top reads email that goes out for busy ministry leaders. Ron, why don't you share with our audience? I mean, it is like our fastest growing resource right now. It is
hands down. It's been out about a year and a half now, and it's reaching thousands. And what we try to do is we've recruited some incredible ministry leaders like the ones in our audience who they're already reading great blogs and articles and columns, both in all kinds of places. And, when we read something good we love out there, we always go, hey, and we forward it to 3 or 4 people. Mm-hmm. Well, what we've asked to do is we've asked some of those readers to include us on those forwards. And we have a team of about 20, 25 people that are out there constantly reading. They're already doing it as part of their own personal development, but they're forwarding what they think is significant to us. And then we have a team who reads all the submissions once a week and tries to pick the very best 12 that we think ministry leaders need to be aware of today. And so this resource is called Top Reads for Busy Leaders. It's not all about ministry, but I will tell you it's heavily weighted that way. We have parenting items in there. We have, moms, dads. We have secular articles. Most of them are Christian, hands down, but we'll find some secular mixed in there because we want you to know the trends and the research, what's happening. You can use a lot of this for your sermon illustrations or to reinforce your sermons. That's why, by the way, it comes out once a week, 6:30 a.m. on Thursday. So that, hey, as you're browsing through it, there might be a last little addition you add into your sermon before you finalize it going into Sunday. But you can sign up. You can Google Top Reads for Busy Leaders, Randall House, and you can sign up. And I think you'll find it to be an incredible resource. Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, we'll wrap up and we'll look forward to our time with Rich Griffin next week. Mm-hmm. Another top reader. He certainly exudes that as we'll learn more about his world. So until then, we're going to pray for you to step into wonderful conversations with leaders of various generations and opportunities to share your experiences. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.